What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we are going to be breaking down the brand new Anthem EA Play trailer, analyzing every single piece of available information within it, and also supplementing that trailer with additional background information so that you guys get the whole picture and are as informed as you possibly could be. And so, let's get started. Now, the information I have about Anthem comes from the fact that I am an EA game changer for Anthem. So, EA flew me out to LA to be a part of EA Play, paid for my accommodations and food and so on, full disclosure with you guys. But let's get started here with the trailer.
The gods vanished and left our world in chaos, creating, altering, destroying.
So, we're gonna stop there and talk about what the heck that means. So, in Anthem, it's a mysterious world even for the inhabitants of that world because these gods, these beings, have come and gone, and when they left all of their equipment, essentially, these Shaper relics. Now, these Shaper relics, like it says, they have the power to change, create, and destroy. They're essentially terraforming equipment that's just left around the world of Anthem. And that's why, when you look at the world of Anthem, it's quite literally a broken world. There's jagged rock faces, massive cliffs. It was a world halfway through being terraformed by these ancient beings that just suddenly stopped. By the way, these creepy looking dudes that scare the one normal looking dude right out of the room, they are the Scars, and they are an enemy faction that you'll face in Anthem. Alright, now let's check out the next part of the trailer.
The Anthem is all that remains.
There's a storm coming. These walls can't protect us forever.
Okay, so I wanted to pause here for a little bit. Now, the Anthem they refer to, there's one thing left, it's the Anthem. It seems to be this device or some sort of thing or a being. No one's exactly sure what it is yet. It is still pretty early on, but it could be the key to controlling the Shaper relics. The person who controls the Shaper relics can quite literally control everything, the environment. You can make everything a desert or a jungle or whatever you want to do. That's a very powerful thing to have. And without that control, you have the storms that were mentioned in the trailer, both literal and metaphorical. We've heard of Shaper storms from the previous E3 demo back a year ago, and they're essentially these massive events that you can take part of, where the Shaper relics seem to be turned on and potentially doing some pretty wild things. Of course, saying you can't protect everyone from the storm, these walls can't keep them safe forever. The walls are literally referring to the walls of Fort Tarsus. This is the main base within Anthem that your kind of free people are holding out in. Now, these are not the only people in existence. In fact, there is an enemy faction composed of freelancers, of people in the same robotic suits that you're in, but with different philosophical views who want to get control of the Anthem. Now, I mentioned sweet robotic suits, and that's exactly what the trailer delivers next. We see all four of the different javelin types flying through the air, and I'm gonna kind of stop and talk about what I just said there because these robotic suits are referred to in the lore as javelins, and again, there's four different types of them confirmed for the launch of Anthem. Whether or not they're adding more in the future is currently unknown. Now, those four different javelin types are, number one, the Ranger. This is kind of your basic soldier javelin. Not incredible in terms of health or mobility, but also not bad at anything either. His abilities include normal grenades. I had a plasma cannon that bounced between enemies for my gameplay session, and his ultimate ability is a missile salvo, where you lock on to all the enemies in front of you and launch a deadly, devastating volley of missiles. Moving on from there, we have the Colossus, or the Big Boy. This is a hulking behemoth that has a ton of health, slower mobility, has access to stuff like flamethrowers as a wrist attachment, as well as a mortar pod that we've seen several times and does phenomenal damage. And his ultimate ability, he takes out this massive gun and just uses it to destroy, frankly, decimate an entire area. Think mortar rounds, but more damage, way bigger explosion, and coming out of a massive gun. Moving on from there, we have the newly revealed Storm. This is kind of our mythical and magical javelin, if you will. We haven't seen a gameplay perspective from this javelin yet, so we don't know too much about it, but in terms of mobility, it may not be the fastest, but it's certainly the most unique. We saw this javelin teleport quickly to the side, which is going to be incredibly useful if you're trying to get to enemies' weak points and so on. In addition to that, he has the ability to shoot out an ice attack, which makes him pelt enemies with continuous ice crystal shards, and his ultimate ability maybe causes a massive electrical explosion. At least that's what I think I witnessed. There was a lot going on. But it is time to move on to our fourth and final javelin with the Interceptor. Now this guy we know basically nothing about, other than the fact that he has the highest mobility for all of the different javelins. So he is going to be the speed demon javelin amongst the rest. And so those are the 4 different available javelins at launch. Now time to continue with the trailer. We then see the 4 javelins descending into a cavern and also going underwater. Now this is kind of showing 2 things. Number 1, the world of Anthem is bigger than just the surface level. There's going to be underwater caves and caverns and places to explore, somewhat similar to Skyrim, where the surface level is just one part of it. There's so many dungeons and places you can go and check out, and that's a whole other aspect of the game. But again, the underwater parts as well are very telling. The underwater portions of Anthem are used as a mode of transportation to find some pretty crazy and otherwise inaccessible places. You can often be battling in a certain area and go underwater, diving into a tunnel and coming up the other side to flank your enemy. You can also use these massive underwater areas to find secrets and hopefully some awesome treasure. Now, right after that, we see some combat, and there's a lot going on in a very short period of time. So firstly, we see the Ranger wielding an electric baton. This is actually his special melee ability. So each of the 4 different javelins will also have a special melee ability unique to that javelin. The Ranger's is, of course, the electric baton. The Colossus slams the ground and creates an area of effect damage that wounds nearby enemies. As for the Interceptor and the Storm, we don't really know yet. We then see this massive cat-like beast roaring at us, and that is indicative of the enemies we face in Anthem. Remember, you are not just fighting normal humanoid enemies like the Scars and other freelancers in Anthem, you are fighting fantastical massive alien beasts in Anthem as well, and that's one example, and we see another at the end of the trailer. Now, after that, we have a quick sequence of events that actually shows quite a bit about the combat system. We see an Interceptor javelin throwing some sort of mine that explodes and causes enemies nearby to freeze. We then see the Colossus shoot his mortar at those enemies and they all shatter and explode, and it's pretty amazing. Now, this is the combo system that is in Anthem's combat system. And what it lets you do is inflict a bunch of different elemental damage effects on enemies, whether that's letting them on fire or freezing them in this case. You combine those elemental effects with other damaging effects like shooting frozen enemies with a mortar and they shatter, inflicting much more damage than normal. Another given example was if you light a bunch of enemies on fire and then hit those enemies with an electric effect, the electricity will arc between enemies and cause the fire to spread. That's pretty sweet. Now, moving on, we then see the Colossus Javelin utilizing his protective shield. And this is just yet another ability that your javelin does have. So the javelins are also going to have kind of a passive ability. The Colossus has the protective shield, and the other javelins have their own thing. And this is on top of 2 different abilities that you can get, and a special melee ability, and a special ultimate ability. Oh, and you also have 2 different weapons you can equip as well. And most of those things, like the 2 weapons and the 2 abilities, are part of the loot system. So you can actually go out and earn more, better, legendary, and so on mortar pods for your Colossus javelin. So a normal mortar pod might just shoot a single round and do an okay explosion, but a legendary mortar pod will shoot 5 mortars one after another and decimate an area. That's not just hypothetical, by the way. We actually saw it in action, and it was as devastating as it sounds. Moving on from there, we have this short clip showcasing the ranger hovering in air and shooting his gun. Now this is actually pretty important because it's here to represent the amount of mobility within Anthem. There isn't just 2 modes, there isn't just on the ground and then flying / swimming. You can actually stop and hover in midair and utilize weapons and abilities. When I played the Ranger, for example, it was entirely possible to jump into the air, double jump, start your flight path, fly near the enemies, break your flight path by going into a hover, utilize your guns from above, raining down damage on enemies, then break out of that again into flying, go around to the side, go back into a hover, utilize an ability, drop down, hit the ground, start sprinting around the ground so you can melee a few enemies, jump up into the air, start flying again immediately without double jumping. There is an insane amount of things you can do with the flight and the movement system. It's pretty unbelievable. But it is time to wrap up the trailer. We see a javelin wounded on the ground. You think it's all over because it's going to get stomped on by this massive titan, but it's saved by the interceptor javelin. And there we have it, guys. That is the trailer, a complete breakdown of everything that's going on within the trailer, and also a ton of background information so that you guys know exactly where this all fits into place with Anthem. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Anthem content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.